2023 was a year filled to the brim with great games. In fact, there were so many, I'm confident that there's tons you forgot or didn't even know were released last year. The one that criminally flew over basically everyone's radar, though, was a little indie RPG called Lunar Lux, and honestly, it's easily one of the best hidden gems that we got from last year. Lunar Lux's development is a bit of an interesting story, in that it was actually being worked on before its developer, cosmicnobabgames, was even properly formed. With it having started off in the RPG Maker engine and being worked on by only one dude with its creator, cosmicnobab. Over time, though, its current team would be formed and Lunar Lux would have a successful Kickstarter campaign, with it raising a little over $50,000 and later getting extra support from its now publisher, Freedom Games. Lunar Lux is a labor of love that at the time of this video sadly hasn't received much attention at all since its release last year, and it absolutely deserves more love than what it's gotten, so to those of you that haven't played it yet, join me as I try to convince you to give this game a shot. And for those of you that have actually played it, stick around anyway, I'm sure you'll have a great time here. A long time ago, before the start of the game, humanity's home planet Terra would be rendered uninhabitable after the cataclysmic antimatter comet Coda passed through it. This disaster forced the last remnants of mankind to retreat to their moon, Luna, where they would eventually terraform it just enough to convert it into their new home. 1,000 years later, humanity faces a new problem with the Mercs, strange antimatter monsters that appeared out of nowhere one day with a taste for people. Making matters worse in the present, though, our protagonist Bella Gray, a prodigy warrior in the Lunex Force, along with her scientist father Thomas Gray and his team, discovered that the comet that destroyed Terra is rearing its head again sooner than expected, and it'll hit Luna in a year's time. So the race is on to find a way to stop the comet Coda, all while Bella tries to unravel the mysteries of the Mercs. Why are they attacking? Where did they come from? And is it possible that they can be communicated and reasoned with? Admittedly, I am skimming over some details to not drag this part of the video out, but this is pretty much the whole premise for Lunar Lux. A lot of the story is a mystery, with some notes of conspiracy courtesy of a later party member named Nickel, or the Merc Slayer as he's called, who, for unknown reasons, isn't exactly a big fan of the Lunex Force. While the story has its nice moments and had me interested in what would happen in both this game and going forward, especially in world building, the real star of the show is its writing, especially for our lovable trio here. Bella and her ever-reliable sidekick Tetra feel like friends that have known each other for a long time. They're both very supportive, but they're not above teasing or making fun of the other, and it never feels mean-spirited at all. I can't talk about Nickel too much without spoilers, so I'll just keep it brief by saying that he's a good example for a brooding character. There's more to him than just a troubling past, and while he certainly has a lot on his plate, we'll say, I love that they make him a more fun character by giving him a bit of adorableness with his love for treasure hunting and archaeology. These three play off of each other very well, and they made for a great trio of protagonists that had some really wholesome moments and funny interactions. On the note of humor, though, I'd be remiss for not talking about the copious amounts of references in this game. If you take your time and explore, you'll find plenty of optional nods and mentions for other games and even some anime. There's references to Animal Crossing, Undertale, tons of stuff for Mega Man, and plenty more that will definitely surprise you. While I could totally understand this being a bit much for some people, I personally thought it was pretty fun and charming. Though I'm admittedly pretty biased since Lunar Lux also references the Star Force games, which were actually my childhood. We also have a frickin' cameo appearance with one of the main characters from Crosscode in Emily, which, for context, is one of my favorite games of all time, like top 5 contender right here. And as a reference to that game, you also get a secret title from her based on how quickly you get to her in the game, which is a nod to the dungeon races she had with that game's protagonist. So as you can plainly see, Lunar Lux has made my inner child and fanboy very happy. You know what else makes me happy, though? The fact that I can pet this adorable little puppy, but on a much less important note, it's also in just how good this game looks and especially sounds. The sprite work and animations for combat all look really good and they have a lot of love put into them, but a special mention needs to be given to the character portraits because they look gorgeous. I love the art style they went with. It's very cute and it allows for a wide range of expressions for characters, especially with Bella, who easily has some of my favorite portraits in the game. Then there's the soundtrack, and honestly, I can't put into words how good it is. Like, not a single piece of music in this game is amiss in the slightest. They all sound great, especially the battle themes. Even if you don't end up playing the game yourself, definitely give its OST a listen. The whole thing's available on Steam for $7 and well worth the money. As for the actual gameplay though, this is where Lunar Lux shines its brightest. Starting with the basics, you don't just have normal attack or spell commands like you would in your average turn-based RPG. Instead, both Bella and Nickel have a broad selection of active skills to use, of which one can be used per character every turn. After you pick one for that turn, it can also be given a bonus effect with a support skill, of which 3 randomly selected ones can be chosen from the 10 you brought into battle. Some attacks are automatic like Bella's Echo Slash, but others like her Gun Saber and Bullet Punch will require you to do an action command to get the most out of, which just like the Mario RPGs as a whole, is a design choice I really love for how it helps keep the player engaged in combat. Similarly to the Battle Network series though, you'll be able to prevent damage by using up your rechargeable Hollow Shield for blocking, or potentially by outright dodging the attack altogether to save your shields. Each active skill is something that makes it unique for that character's arsenal, like how skills such as Moonlight Dive can hit the opponent 5 times if you time your button presses correctly, and some even have special bonus effects, like how Bella's Echo Slash gets 10 more base power every time it's consecutively used. This, combined with how varied the effects for support skills can be, gives you a fairly broad range of things to consider in combat, like how costly an attack is, and the possibility that you could pull a support skill that multiplies damage, or even prevents damage against you altogether for that turn. And neither party member feels exactly the same. Both Bella and Nickel have very different abilities from the other, and are very useful for different reasons. And this extends to the strongest tools in their arsenal. For Bella, we have the Lux Gauge. As you attack enemies and block damage, this will fill up, and when maxed out, you'll be able to perform one of 30 different Lux combos by using 3 active skills of your choosing. These can do massive damage, and usually they'll even have other really useful effects to go along with that, like a boosted crit rate, shield regeneration, and even status effects. That being said though, they do have the trade-off that the gauge will go down a bit every time you take damage, and this applies to both party members. As you can imagine, this means Nickel has a gauge of his own like Bella does, but in contrast, while you raise it the same way, it results in something very different. For him, once his anti-gauge is filled, he can change into his phase form, which lasts for 3 turns and doubles the base power for all of his skills, and it even blocks any attack from enemies that would do 50 damage or less. Between the two, while I did use Lux combos more for reasons more related to side content than anything else, they're both very useful, and very powerful tools that provide a nice extra incentive for doing well in battle. As a whole, the devs did a really great job with Lunar Lux's battle system. It's built in such a way that it's consistently really satisfying to actually play, while actively keeping the player engaged in what's going on. You could maybe argue it's a bit too easy since from my experience, I never really died at all, but I personally wouldn't consider this a problem, because I still had a great time despite that, and even then, the game's going to get a hard mode at some point anyway, so I'd argue it isn't really an issue in the long run. Having said that though, I do have a small criticism with Bella specifically. See, thanks to certain attacks, amongst other things in her arsenal, she can very easily fill the gauge in the later parts of the game, especially towards the end. It never did take away from how much fun I was having at all, but I feel like it can be a bit too easy to abuse your Lux combos for incredibly high damage. On a different note though, let's talk about the exploration and side content, because my god is it rewarding, and honestly, it's the best part of the game for me. In between fights and story objectives, you can explore each of Luna's major areas for side quests as well as money and items, which include things that can permanently raise your max HP, shield count, and the level for one of your active skills, and so on and so forth. Now, while this may not sound that crazy for an RPG at all, the thing that makes it so good is how jam-packed it is with things to find. This game is littered with items and secrets to find. Like, I'm only half joking when I say you can't go 30 seconds without finding something while you're in a new area, and I love it. There's nothing more rewarding and satisfying for me in a game than being rewarded with or able to find a wide variety of stuff regardless of its intended purpose, and the game understands this love of mine perfectly. Like, I spoke to an adorable cat in a spacesuit I randomly found, and it rewarded me with a crap ton of money. This is amazing. You can even find new active and supporting skills in the environment as well, which only further incentivizes you to explore every inch of the world, and this extends to the side quests as well, because those are very worth your time. You can get new active skills like Bullet Punch from them, as well as money and other items, but they can also reward you with recipes telling you how to use certain Lux combos, and in one case, a straight-up upgrade for the support skill for Tetra, which is an attack that hits every enemy that went from 50 damage all the way to 200. Doing side quests as well as talking with NPCs will also net you affinity with that region, which when raised enough will actually get you discounts for its shops, with it maxing out at 40% off, which is pretty nice considering how pricey some of the buyable skills and upgrades can get. Honestly, I really can't emphasize enough how great of a time I had with Lunar Lux. Bella, Tetra, and Nickel are a great trio that had some really nice as well as funny and wholesome moments, with the writing for the side characters and supporting cast also being really good. The overall game was very well made, with it having a great combat system and exploration as well as side content that does a fantastic job at rewarding the player. To those of you still watching that haven't played this game yet, I implore you to consider getting it for yourself. It's sitting on Steam at $20, and if you don't want to play it on PC, maybe consider keeping an eye out for its eventual Switch release. Lunar Lux is a labor of love that's absolutely worth your time as well as money, and it deserves far more attention than it's actually gotten. And after this, I'm definitely going to start keeping an eye out for any future titles cosmicnobabgames puts out, like Lunar Lux's hopefully inevitable sequel. Thank you all for watching, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and hope you all have a nice day.